well, how should I say this? I'm having a brain fart. Actually happened last night in the middle of the sermon, doing the right from the pulpit. Anyway, if brain farts had an odor, it would have cleared the room. It was that bad.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio episode number 245. I'm your host Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week. For those of you who are new to the show, thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoy what you hear today. You stumbled on a good episode if this is your first episode. For those of you who are new, this is a show about guns and hunting and competitive shooting and the natural right of self-defense and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. But we're not doing so much of that today because today we have our 5th annual Christmas gift list episode. Every year we set aside our typical discussions of the Second Amendment and gun rights and gun enthusiasm, and share our ideas for gifts for the loved ones in your life, especially if they happen to be hunters or competitive shooters or gun enthusiasts. And we will hear from Mia Anstein, Sergeant Bill Sylvia, and Pastor John Bennett in just a moment. But first, I want to give a shout out to the men and women of the Reformation Gun Club, the people who make this show possible this week. I want to especially shout out for Donnie from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, Gavin from Hickory, North Carolina, Greg from Holly, Michigan, Melvin from Holt, Missouri, Robert from Monroe, Georgia, and Steve from Grovetown, Georgia. Thank you all so much for your support. Armed Lutheran Radio is listener funded, folks. That means we don't have any advertising. You're not going to hear any commercials during the show. We rely on the generosity of the members of the Reformation Gun Club to help keep going and keep doing what we do. If you would like to help us keep going, to keep the lights on, to pay the bills, and hopefully to make some improvements, equipment. We're looking at doing some upgrades to equipment in the near future, and your donations could definitely help. Plus, you get access to lots of cool stuff. As a member of the Reformation Gun Club, you get early access to the show. You get access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content that's not available anywhere else. Depending on the membership level you choose, there's some really cool swag. So check it all out at armedlutheran.us/gun club. See what you think. And we hope you would join us. We also host a monthly online hangout. One of those is coming up soon. Members of the Reformation Gun Club are invited to take part in that. And if you would like to do that, find out more about the Gun Club, check it out. As I mentioned, armedlutheran.us/gun club, or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. Okay, today, like I said, is our annual Christmas gift list episode. Mia and Sergeant Bill and Pastor Bennett will be up in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to start with my ideas. This has been a little bit of a weird year. And so my list is a little bit different. I haven't been shooting in almost a year now, so I don't have a lot of shooting-related gift ideas for you. I'm going to leave that to Mia and Bill, but I do have some ideas that are related to our most recent episodes 243 and 244, where we talked about disconnecting from the culture. One of our recommendations in those shows, maybe the biggest recommendation, was to sort of just disconnect, turn off the TV, and spend time with your family. Get away from the major mainstream media and find alternative ways to entertain yourself, whether it's reading a good book or playing a game with your family. So that's where my recommendations are coming from. And so I've got some ideas for you that I wanted to share. And first, obviously, is going to be a copy of the new book, Duty to Defend. Now, this is our newest book. It's available in paperback and on Kindle. It's a collection of essays by Lutheran pastors around the country. We take the most commonly misused Bible verses in the gun rights debate, and we put them in proper context. We've got essays from people like Pastor Larry Bean, Paul Kane, former guest Evan Gegline from Table Talk Radio, Jason Reed, Tab Ottmers, former guest Gavin Mize from the Cross-Eyed Christian podcast, Thomas Stark, Richard Boland, and Robert McCandless, plus transcripts from my interviews with Pastor Brian Wolfmueller, also of Table Talk Radio and YouTube fame, and Ralph Abernathy, where we discuss the three estates and gun-free zones. And there's an introduction by our own Pastor John Bennett. So for the Christian gun owner who wants to understand better how to respond to when you hear or read Scripture being misused to support gun control or to support gun rights, this is a perfect gift, if I do say so myself. Another book from a former guest that I would highly recommend for those of you who want to teach your kids about the importance of the Second Amendment. Check out a book by former guest Yehuda Reamer, better known as the Pew Pew Jew. It's called 27 Words, and it breaks down the words of the Second Amendment to the Constitution in a way that kids can understand it. I mean, after all, we see how badly adults understand it, so it's important to teach your kids early what the words of that amendment really mean. It's illustrated, it's well written, it's a perfect gift for your kids, and I can't recommend it highly enough. One of the things that we recommended in the previous two episodes was dumping Netflix, because we all know Netflix is heavily linked to members of the political left, and a lot of their content is questionable, shall we say? Not to mention the fact that they're aligned. I think they hired the Obamas to play a major role in content creation and selection. Director, I don't remember what the title was that they gave to Obama. So once they made that announcement, I decided I was going to get off Netflix. I did not want to be sending my money every month to the Obamas to fund their lavish retirement and the lefty content that they were going to be creating. So there are some good shows on the service, though. But there are even better books on which some of those shows are based, and I wanted to share some of those ideas because, as you know, as it happens with any television adaptation or any movie adaptation of a book, the book is always better. So you may not know it. Some of these you may, but I thought I would recommend a few here. First off is maybe my favorite Netflix series ever, Longmire. It's based on a series of books by Craig Johnson, and if you like crime dramas in a Western setting, it's a modern setting, but set out west in Wyoming, in the fictional county of Absaroka in Wyoming. It is it's a really fun series of books. I think you'll really enjoy it. Walt Longmire, who is portrayed very well in the series, but he's very different in the series than he is in the books. He's kind of sour and sardonic in the TV show, but in the books, if you like sarcasm and wit, he is the perfect character for you. And all of the books are written from the first person perspective, which is unusual and a lot of fun. Check that out. Another series that I enjoyed and I binge watched on Netflix at one time was called Altered Carbon, and it's based on a series of books by Richard K. Morgan. It's a murder mystery set in this sort of dystopian future where technology makes it possible for you to kind of live forever by downloading your memories and your consciousness and then transferring that to another body after your current one dies. So it's an interesting storyline, and the books are better than the TV series on Netflix. So check that out. Umbrella Academy is another. It's a series about a group of teenagers with superpowers who are adopted by some mysterious billionaire. You kind of picture Professor X and his school for mutants from the X-Men series. But it's based on a series of graphic novels that were, I didn't know this, written by Gerard Way, who is the lead singer from the band My Chemical Romance, of all things. I had no idea. But check out that series of graphic novels instead of watching the series, because I guarantee it's going to be better. For fantasy fans, there's a couple of cool series that are based on books as well. There's the series Cursed, which is an interesting retelling of the Arthurian legend, where the main character crosses paths with King Arthur at various points. It's based on a book by Thomas Wheeler, and it's got to be better than the TV series because they always are. Plus, it's illustrated by legendary comic illustrator Frank Miller, and you may know that name from his work on the Batman comics and Daredevil, and the graphic novel that inspired the Gerard Butler movie 300. So check that out. My favorite of the fantasy offerings is, of course, The Witcher. I've mentioned this before. The series it's okay. It's pretty good. At times it's really good. At times it's kind of meh because they depart from the story, unfortunately. But it's based on a series of books by Andrzej Sapkowski. The books are fantastic. I blew through all 8 of them in short order when the lockdown first started, and we couldn't go anywhere, and you couldn't get out of the house. So I just burned through these books in probably a month. I mean, I just one after another. I couldn't stop. I couldn't put them down. They were really, really good. Start out with the book The Last Wish, which I didn't do. I think I read, there's one of them that's not, like, I don't remember. I bought several of them, and I bought the one that I thought was the first. I think it was Sword of Destiny. I don't remember. But The Last Wish is actually the first one, which kind of introduces the character. And it turns out it's the basis for much of the first season of the series on Netflix. Netflix took some really annoying liberties with the story, but the books are fantastic, so check them out. Now, a couple of final recommendations, and these are another thing that we talked about you can do to kind of disconnect from the culture and find some fun ways to spend time with your family instead of watching the boob tube, is a family game night. It's a great way to sit down and spend time with family and not have all the distractions of social media and television. And so there's 3 games that we added to our collection this past year that are a lot of fun. And as long as you don't mind kind of crude humor, jokes about farts and potty humor, then you will love these games, and your kids will love them too. My first suggestion is a game called Kids Against Maturity. It's basically a fill-in-the-blank game where you take turns. Each player goes around and you draw a card and ask a question, and it has a blank that has to be filled in, and then each of the other players has to fill in the blank with one of the answers from the cards in their deck. And then each person puts their answers into the pile, and the player who read the question has to go through and read out the answers. And the one that he thinks, or he or she thinks, is the funniest wins the point, and whoever gets the most, that has the most funny answers wins the game. It's really a lot of fun. As long as you have a decent sense of humor and you don't mind jokes that are a little off color. None of them are foul language or anything like that, but a little bit crude at times. You and your kids will love it, especially if you have kids in the 7 to 10 year old range, young teens. They will find it very funny. The runner up would be a couple of card games, or runners up, I should say, a couple of card games that are variations on the game Uno, if you know how Uno works. The first one is called Exploding Kittens. It's like Uno, but with goats and magical enchiladas and kittens that explode and kill you. So the rules are a little more complicated than Uno, but once you get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun. You can knock out a game in 15, 20 minutes. And if you love kittens and explosions and occasionally laser beams, you will love this game. And your kids will find it very funny too. And then the last one is a game, yes, it's called Poop. Your kids will think this is hilarious, especially if they're young teens or, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. They will find this very funny. It's a color and number matching game similar to Uno, but you have to get rid of all of your cards. Each one of them is a different size pile of poop, which you have to flush. And there's a predetermined score which you cannot exceed. All of your cards are numbered, and if the number of the cards that you pile up clogs the toilet, you lose. So each card is based on some kind of bathroom humor, including some penalties which require your opponents to make certain noises each time they take a turn, which your kids will find hilarious when they see mom and dad doing it. If you don't mind a little potty humor, it's a great game. It's a lot of fun. These games are 2 to 5, 2 to 7 players, best probably if you can get 3 or 4 people playing at a time. And they're best for kids over 6. And you can probably knock out a game with setup and the learning curve or learning the rules in probably about a half hour. So great fun if you want to find some unconventional games to play with your kids, which I think you will really enjoy. So check one or all 3 of those out. And again, you will find links to all of these in the show notes, and you can get a list and links to all of the gift ideas from myself and my amazing cast at armedlutheran.us/Christmas. So be sure to remember that. Look for a link in the show notes where you can you'll be able to go and you'll be able to find all of these ideas, and including some from previous episodes. So that's it for me. Those are my ideas. Like I said, it's a little different this year, but then again, 2020 has been a very different year for all of us. So I hope you enjoy that. And I hope some of those ideas are useful for you and your family. Time now to turn over the show to my awesome cast and hear what their ideas are for Christmas gift giving. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show. I will talk to you again next week.
Time now for Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstein.
Hey guys, it's Mia here. Happy holidays to you. I hope you guys are enjoying time with family. I know a lot of people are distancing, and for health reasons, I do understand that, but it is a lot more fun to hang out with family and friends. Today, I want to encourage you to shop local and support local retailers when you are looking for your Christmas gifts and items to share with friends. I, this year, put out to my friends and family and followers ideas for gifts. I requested those from women this year. And the list really isn't much different than what we get from men. The number one thing on every woman's Christmas gift list was ammunition, and then number 2 was guns. There were also a sprinkling in of a few different items, and one of them is a gun vault. or console vaults for your truck, different ways to carry in your vehicle. New holsters are always a great idea. Firearms-related apparel, so think hats and shirts that are branded with whatever their favorite firearm is. One friend said, I would like a new bow because when you're out of ammo, I want a backup plan. And I thought that was a funny idea. It's kind of cute. I had to share it with you. Red dot sights, those are great gifts, and I will be sharing in a future episode a red dot sight that I tried out when I was at a writer's event at the Whittington Center with Lucid Optics. So stay tuned for that in an episode coming in 2021, or a segment, I apologize. It'll be one of Mia's minute segments. Scopes and binoculars are also great ideas. Conceals bookshelves and cabinets for the home. Primers and reloading materials, rifle cases, a SIRT gun, dry fire magazines, bipods, socks, a private firearms class. And that's one actually that my husband and I are giving to each other this year, our private class. I do give classes, but I also like to go take classes. It's great to learn from other people and experience with others. So that's something that you can think of. Range memberships and range fees. Those are great for people who maybe can't afford those and want to get some range time. Hunting trips, I would suggest those. You can check those out online. If you have questions about those and how to book a hunting trip, message me on social media. Hunting gear, as in rangefinders, headlamps, again, binoculars, good boots, shooting sticks, knives, and so forth. And when we're looking at knives, you can also look for good multi-tools. A friend said consumables, and they meant sausage, jerky, and other items. And I've actually given as a gift the dehydrated meals, so check that out. Something that I hadn't thought of, and maybe I have given it in a segment before, but memberships to insurance sites, maybe the USCCA site or one of those 2A, or even conservation organizations, maybe Safari Club International or Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, one of those. Books are also a great gift idea. Think of Lloyd's new book, which I have just started to read, and I'm enjoying it so far. Money and gift cards, they're also great gifts. Then they can get exactly what they want. But those are some of the ideas that the ladies provided this year. As I said, it's kind of unisex in that list, but ammunition and guns are at the top of the list. So I hope you have some time to check that out. I hope you have a lot of money for ammunition, because whoo, that stuff is pricey nowadays. Anyways, have a good one. Happy holidays, guys.
You can read more from Mia, watch her YouTube videos, or check out her podcast, Mac Outdoors with Mia and Leah, at miaanstein.com. Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Sylvia.
Hey everybody, I'm Sergeant Bill, and this is your Ballistic Minute. Today I want to talk to you about the 2020 Christmas gift ideas. Now with the election and the pandemic and all the stuff that's been going on in 2020 and all this craziness, guns and ammo are, well, expensive and scarce. So my normal gift-giving ideas of buying magazines and or guns or ammo or components is kind of difficult to do because you can't find any of that stuff. So here's my suggestion in these times when guns and ammo are scarce. You still want to shoot, you still want to improve, work on your dry fire. Now you can work on your dry fire for as little as nothing. All you need is some time, a safe space, an empty gun, and some practice. But if you want to get some tools to help you manage your dry fire or direct your training in a little bit better routine, you can either buy some tools to do it or buy some information. So let's talk about the tools first. What tools can you get to dry fire better or make it a little bit more interesting? Well, you could buy a SIRT pistol, which is the shot indicating reset trigger or something or other. Basically, it's a copy of either a Glock or an M&P, and I think they've got some other models, pistols that has a realistic feeling trigger that resets itself, and it has either a red or green laser that shows you where your shot's going to be and shows you if you're dipping the trigger or dipping the muzzle as you pull the trigger, and it helps you with working the trigger and shot placement and accuracy. A quick glance on their website showed that these average about $340 a piece, so it's kind of pricey. You could go with a Cool Fire Trainer, which Cool Fire Trainer is basically a CO2 cartridge in a magazine and a barrel that uses that CO2 to make the gun feel like it's got recoil, makes the slide work back and forth when you work the trigger. They make these for a bunch of different types of guns, and they all average around $330, which is still pretty pricey, but it's a pretty good deal for what it actually does. You get dry fire with some actual recoil, not as much as actually live firing the gun, but more than no recoil. You could purchase the Mantis X, which we have talked about in previous shows way back a year or two ago, maybe 3 years ago. The Mantis X basically attaches to the light rail on your gun and gives you information on what the muzzle is doing when you're pressing the trigger. They have several different models, and they range anywhere from $100 all the way up to about $250. There's a couple other laser cartridge dry fire training setups that you can get, including the iTarget and the Laser Hit, and I think there's a couple others. And they all average somewhere around $100 to $150 or so. And they do sort of the same thing that the SIRT pistol does, but you get to use your actual gun instead of a similar gun to the one you have. And then you could also get a dry fire mag. Dry fire mag is a weighted mag that helps to reset the gun every time you press the trigger, and it's pretty magical. I've never actually got to play with it, but I've heard a few people say they really liked it. And that runs about $200. All of those tools are a bit pricey, but if you have the money to spend on a gift for someone that's going to help their dry fire and make them a better shooter, then go for it. If you want to go a little cheaper route and you want to get some more knowledge and a little bit more direction in your training, you could get any number of books or cards. So there's a dry fire training cards that you can get. I think you can get them on Amazon for about $30, and they're kind of like playing cards, and you just pick one and it gives you some dry fire drills to work on. So it gives you some direction in your training, and it gives you specific stuff to do. There's lots of different books you can get about dry fire, but there are two authors that I think are probably the best out there, and that's Steve Anderson and Ben Steger. Steve Anderson has been doing dry fire and a podcast about dry fire for many years, and his training classes are fantastic as well. I have several friends that have been through them and have learned a lot and improved. I've used a couple of his books, and I think they're fantastic as well. He's got 3 different books: Refinement and Repetition, Principles of Performance, and Get to Work. Each of these books on his website retails at about $27 each, or you could get all 3 in a 3-book combo for $75. These are very specific directions on how to do dry fire training and what to do and how to do it, where to do it, everything. They're outstanding, and I highly recommend them. Now, Ben Steger's got several books to cover dry fire and skills and drills and live fire shooting and marksmanship, and any one of his books are actually really good. I've read all of them, and they're very specific, very instructional, and just outstanding. If I were to suggest one just for dry fire, it would be Dry Fire Reloaded. You can get that at about $20 on the Ben Steger Pro Shop. And if you decide you want to get their practice package, it's $30, but it comes with some dry fire miniaturized targets that you can put up on the wall that help make your dry fire that goes along with that book more productive. They also have, for $106, a 5-book pack that includes Dry Fire Reloaded, Skills and Drills, Practical Pistol, Breakthrough Marksmanship, and Match Mentality. I've read each one of these books. Every one of them is outstanding in its own right. All together, they make a complete system to make you a much better shooter, competition shooter, tactical shooter, whatever you want it to be. It gives you the live fire skills, practice routines, dry fire skills with practice routines, how to work at matches, how to have a match mentality, how to focus on the specific things in your marksmanship that make you a better shooter. Every one of them is outstanding in its own right, and altogether, they're all good reads, and they're all great information. So if you're looking for gift ideas for that shooter in your life, get them a gift that'll help them become a better shooter so that they can train and practice more efficiently and more effectively and become that good shooter they always wanted to be. I'm Sergeant Bill. This has been your Ballistic Minute. Merry Christmas, y'all.
Sergeant Bill Sylvia is a veteran of the Dallas Police Force and a masterclass competitive shooter. You can check out his YouTube videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill. It's time for Pastoral Pontifications with Pastor John Bennett.
Hello, this is the Pistol Packing Padre, Pastor John Bennett, and what do I want for Christmas? What's on my wish list? Well, it'd be really nice to have nationwide voter ID laws. It'd be great to have an election that was completely void of any voter fraud. What would really be nice, too, is inexpensive and plentiful ammunition. Hey, after all, this is a wish list, so why not aim big? Well, of course, this is about as realistic as a 6-year-old living in an apartment in New York City asking Santa for a pony, but of course those things would be really nice. But all joking aside, let's be a little more realistic. I recently got a new gun safe, and for this safe I have a few accessories on my list. It would be really nice to have a dehumidifier rod for it. Now, if you aren't familiar with what this is, it's a very small heating element that you can put in your safe, and it takes the humidity out of the air so that your firearms don't get rusty at all. It's a great thing to have. I also like to get a motion-activated light system. Now, I do have this new safe wired so that I can plug in accessories inside of it, and it'd be great to have that so that when I open the safe, I can see better of what's inside it there. Another thing that I've been thinking about would be getting a GPS tracker with geofencing. They aren't terribly big. You can hide them behind the door panel so that a thief would never notice them. And what the geofencing feature does is that you get a notification sent to you when the sensor realizes that it's being moved. Now, there's some that do have monthly subscription fees. I'm hoping to find something that you buy the device outright and there's no fees associated. Who likes to pay month to month for something like that? But it'd be really nice to have. That way, if you're on vacation, if you're at work, whatever, and somebody's trying to steal your gun safe, you've got a notification. You can call 911 and, hopefully it's heavy enough that by the time they manage to get it out the door, the police show up and stop them from taking off with your firearms. Another thing that I realized, and perhaps this is something you haven't thought of yet, is that I have a lot of ammunition. And now I have my old gun safe, which has plenty of room for nothing but ammunition. If there ever was a fire, I'd hate to put any firefighters at risk because, at the moment, all my ammunition, it's not stored in anything that's fireproof. So that old safe, it's getting repurposed as a fire-resistant storage for my ammunition. Again, great idea. Ammunition is expensive, as we know, especially right now, but also I would hate to sell that safe off for a few $100 and then later on have a fire and then a firefighter is injured or killed because I've got ammunition that gets set on fire and goes off and injures somebody. Now, of course, it'd be great to fill up that new safe with a few more firearms, but that's not in the budget right now. It'll have to wait except for one. I'd really like to find a reasonably priced youth 20-gauge shotgun. My kids, they want to learn how to shoot trap, and the recoil and size of my 12-gauge shotguns, it's a little too much for the kids to handle, especially Benjamin, who's 8 years old. And he's the one who's really the most excited to learn about trap shooting. Because of his age and his size, he's going to need a gun that has a short enough stock and a light enough weight to it that he can manage it. Fortunately, youth shotguns have suddenly become about as rare as reasonably priced ammo, so I might be waiting on that for a little while. If any of you listeners come across a well-priced 20-gauge, prefer a pump-action youth shotgun, please let me know, especially if it's one that has the various sized spacers for the buttstock. Now, of course, if it's one of the ridiculously priced ones that you can find on Gunbroker now, no thanks, I'm not paying $700 for a Mossberg pump-action 20-gauge. That's just not happening. Now, some things that are on my list I've already managed to get a hold of. Now, while finding a youth shotgun isn't something that may happen anytime in the near future, my son had put on his list for Santa. Yes, my kids, they still make out their lists for Santa, even though my oldest knows now and doesn't believe anymore in Santa Claus. That's fine. But my son had put on his list a gun that Dad can store for me. Now, I'm sure he's thinking of that youth shotgun that we've been talking about for quite a while now. But since that's probably not going to happen, I got him a Red Ryder BB gun. Now, the sad thing is that these are now made in China, but at $25, the quality seems decent enough, and unlike ammunition for pistols and rifles and whatnot, BBs are real cheap. It's easy to find them, and so I'll be getting one for myself perhaps at some point too. I'm sure it'd be nice to take an hour and spend $3 in BBs at the range than to blow through $30 in ammo in 10 minutes. Another thing to go with that Red Ryder BB gun is a BB trap and target stand. These aren't terribly expensive. They're designed for the velocity of a BB. They can be used indoors. Perhaps you might not to use these near any windows, especially if that young one that's learning to shoot isn't the most accurate. But in our Minnesota winters, sometimes it's not terribly fun to go shooting outside, so this might make for some good recreation in our basement this winter when the weather isn't too pleasant. Now, lastly, the thing I'd like the most this Christmas is to spend time with family. With the communist China coronavirus, my in-laws who live quite close to us, they've been pretty isolated. My father-in-law, he has emphysema, so for him the virus could be quite dangerous. We're really hoping they feel safe enough to spend time with us this Christmas, but even if that doesn't happen, I'm really looking forward to spending some quality time with my wife and children and our church family. Well, that's all that I have on my list. May God grant you all the joy this time of year to celebrate the birth of our Savior, who came into this world to save miserable sinners like us through his sufferings, death, and resurrection. And may our merciful Father grant you good health and happiness in the year to come.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.